never forget working with a middle school age student who had never played a board game before. And we taught our student to play modified Uno. And he had so much fun playing with me in therapy sessions, playing during his group therapy sessions, and generalizing it when he went to his grandparents' house for the weekend. If you're working with middle school, high school students, even adults, this is going to be a great episode. We are going to break down modified leisure skills. What skills can our students work on in therapy that is going to help them with their overall engagement, their overall peer-to-peer interaction? It will help increase their social skills, their independence, and most importantly, their joy and happiness. I can't wait for you to listen to all of these activities that you can start using with your own child or your students today. This is a great one.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to episode 53 of the Autism Outreach Podcast. I am super excited to be talking to you today about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. For those of you that don't know, I am a school-based speech therapist. 3 days a week, I work in a middle school and high school, and I love working with students in that age range. I've created a product called Double Up. I've created a vocational binder. I've done numerous podcast episodes about helping older students, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Such great information, and definitely a population I feel doesn't have enough research. There's not enough actionable tips and strategies that you can use if you're out there and you're listening and you have an older child at home, or if you're a special ed teacher or you're a speech therapist and you're generally working with autistic students or students with complex communication needs who are in middle school and high school. So today we're going to be talking about modified leisure skills. And this is such an important topic. Oftentimes when I was working at especially a non-public program, I would see that anytime we had unstructured time, that our students really struggled. They really had a deficit in independent leisure skills and in cooperative leisure skills. Group therapy is also my jam. It is one of my favorite things to do in this world is to plan lessons for groups. And so we're going to be talking about these different ideas that you can start using with your students immediately. We're going to talk a little bit about assessment today. We're going to talk about data collection, but really the meat of our time together today in this podcast is going to be about modified leisure activities. And these are activities that you can use if you're seeing students clinically in more of a one-on-one setting, or you can also use them if you are pushing into the classroom and you are doing sessions with students. I right now, and for pretty much my whole entire career, have always been seeing my students in some type of group atmosphere or environment. I love working on that peer-to-peer interaction. And I always say, I'm trying to literally work myself out of a job so that my students can spend time together, my students are communicating together, and my students are doing something that they love and enjoy together with peers, with people that are in their classes. And so that's why I'm excited to break it all down for you today. Leisure skills are so very important because when I'm working with my middle school and high school students, I really am thinking about them as if they were going to be graduating soon. I want to make sure that everything that I'm working on is extremely functional for my student. We should be thinking this to ourselves in every meeting. Now, I had the opportunity to work in a non-public program here, Cleveland Clinic Center for Autism. That's what it used to be called. Now it's the Learner School. And I had some really I don't want to say contentious, but I'd say high pressure meetings for a 23-year-old. I was 23 when I worked there. And, I would have special education directors coming in, lawyers, advocates, you name it. Every single person was at that IEP table. And they were drilling me on why I was working on different things with students. So we need to know that these things that I'm going to talk about today are super important for our students because we want them to be able to enjoy activities with others. We want them to practice functional communication skills with others their same age. And we want these things to be lifelong, things that they will love and enjoy and derive happiness out of over the course of their lifespan. Sometimes it can be hard for us to understand that, when a student really struggles with these types of leisure skills, they are really going to not be able to access the community as much, and they're not going to be able to access school as much either. And so it really, really is important. It might be considered out of the box thinking to target these types of skills on IEPs. But I just wrote an IEP probably 2 weeks ago. And I wrote a goal with the teacher. So it's a shared goal where she's going to work on this goal and I will also work on it during therapy. And it would fall into this area of leisure skills, of modified leisure skills. And you think when a student is younger, in the area that I live in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, we have what I think, I'm not a parent of an autistic child, but, I'm a provider. And I think that we have really great opportunities for all learners here that's very inclusive. We have story times at libraries that are inclusive. We have movie times that are inclusive. We have plays that are inclusive. If you're not living in a community that has that, these other types of skills are going to be really, really important because what I have seen is that individuals who are autistic or have complex needs or have high support needs, as they get older, it seems that there's less and less opportunities for them to be immersed in the community. And I hate that. So the things I'm going to talk about today are things that can be generalized to either your family environment, outside of school as well, and things that can be generalized to the community at large. I'll never forget, I had a student I was working with. I have him in some of my videos from Help Me Find My Voice, which is my school age autism course. And, this student really did not have a lot of things that he enjoyed doing. And once we kind of figured out that he liked music, it really kind of opened up his entire world. But the other thing that we started working on with the student is playing modified Connect 4. So this student was working on turn taking, and I saw him in his school program, which was an ABA type clinic, and I saw him for outpatient therapy too. So I got to know his mom really well, and just family too, dad, sister, everybody. And we started playing Connect 4 in a very modified way. So I would ask him, did he want to be black or red? I think those are the colors, right? And he would choose, and then we would take turns putting in a red one, and then he would put in a black one, and I would put in a red one, and he would have put in a black one. So we were modifying in the fact that there were no winners, there were no losers. The completion of the activity was when the Connect 4 board is completely filled with tokens. So it was something where we were doing an activity together. So we could call that joint attention. Sometimes we use that more with younger students, but we were doing a shared activity together. It was very social in nature. I was taking a turn, he was taking a turn. We were engaged together. It was very fun. He enjoyed it very much. And I remember talking to his mom and saying, we're working on Connect 4 in this way that's really modified. And, so-and-so really, he's enjoying it and he's doing a really great job with it. And she ended up buying him Connect 4 for Christmas. And she told me, he played with his sister. And it was really amazing because there just isn't a whole lot of things they do together. And I thought, well, that is super exciting. Oh my goodness, I'm going to cry right now thinking about it. But, sometimes older students, it can be hard for them to have shared activities with family. And so this is a really nice thing to think about. And Connect 4 is something that's very inexpensive. I think it might be $9 or $12, on Amazon. Okay, so that was my whole point of telling that story, is to say, hey, this is important, right? What we do every single day as a therapist is super important, but it's important not just in that moment. It's important when that student goes home with their family. It's important when they hang out with their cousins during Thanksgiving time. It's important. So one of the things I like to think about for assessment, obviously, sometimes it can be harder to capture these skills we're going to talk about today in a standardized assessment. So one assessment that I really love, and you may not have heard of it if you're a speech therapist, is called the Assessment of Functional Living Skills. In the BCBA world, we call this the AFLS. I like this assessment so much because it directly looks at leisure. There's a whole area that's just called leisure. And it was created by James Partington, who is a PhD, BCBAD, and Michael Muller. It is for sale. They have their own website. Different Roads to Learning, who's one of my favorite distributors, also sells it. And it looks at a variety of skills like basic living, community, vocational, but it also has a leisure section that is super detailed and will really give you a great snapshot. So some of the leisure items that it looks at are, does the student look at books and magazines? Does the student listen to music? Do they play board games? Do they play electronic games? Do they engage in leisure activities with a variety of people? And do they hang out with peers? I mean, these are the types of things that kids are doing in their age group. And so I always try to look and see, what are typical language learners doing? What does my student love? And how can I put those things together to help them have a robust leisure repertoire? Because that's important as an adult. I always think about that. What do I do in my everyday? I just took my kids to school, so I hang out with family. I have work, ABA speech. And then when I'm not doing these things, I'm doing leisure, right? I'm making a TikTok video. I'm going to go to do Orange Theory after I get off the podcast today. I like leisure. It's fun for me. Sometimes my work is my leisure though, too. I'm not going to lie. But sometimes it's hard for our students to have those leisure skills. And I'll tell you what, I am friends with a lot of moms who have autistic children. And I know that downtime, that time at home, is really hard for them, that unstructured time. So this is really giving our students a way to really embrace life. Also, I think about this for my students who are working on competitive employment or working on vocational skills. If you have a break, if you have downtime and you have an independent skill that you know how to play Fruit Ninja on your iPhone, or you know how to, play a game with somebody in the break room, these are things that are going to make your life enriched, and you're going to be fully participating and communicating independently. And you're going to have happiness. And that's what we want for all of our students. So another assessment, so the AFLS, if you're a speech therapist and you're like, I don't know, I think that maybe this outside BCBA did that test, and I think, maybe my student had it. I would ask to get the results if you're not already getting that information, because there's really, really great information. And our special education teacher, where I work in a district, she is the one that has that assessment, and she has it down in her office. And so sometimes we will give that assessment together, or we'll give parts of that assessment together too. Another test that I really like is called the Functional Communication Profile Revised. Now, this is one that's more in the world of speech therapy. I do like this because it does look at leisure and some of the things it looks at. Does the student play with others? Does the student comment? Does the student make friends? That's kind of subjective, but do they have a preferred person or people that they sit with at lunch? Do they engage in turn taking, and do they engage in conversation? So if you have the Functional Communication Profile Revised hanging out in your office, I also like that one too, because I feel like it's more readily available. And we know that with any good assessment, that makes a gold standard assessment is that we do an observation. So doing an observation during an unstructured time. So for me, in my middle school, high school, I like to go in gym. I like to see what happens in gym. We have great gym teachers. It's structured, but there is times to wait, and, there are different skills you're working on. So that gives me good information. And sometimes I go into the classroom to see how my students are doing too. So those assessments paired with your observation, talking with the team, parents, teachers, very, very important, because we know too, some students will, do great on a standardized score for social language, but when you see them in the natural environment, they're having a hard time with application. So goal setting is really important. And, some of the goals that I've set for students is that they'll engage in a conversation with peers. That they'll talk about what they want to talk about. They're in middle school and high school. I think, this is a time where we really have to give our students some autonomy to be independent. Encouraging students to make comments during a group, that's something that we've goal set before. Another one is student will participate in a group for a set duration of time. I like that because I have a student right now who is entering high school. And when I first met him, when he was in sixth grade, he really had a hard time just being in group. It was just difficult for him. And now he thrives in group. And the thing that I do with my groups that I plan, it's not always the same activities, but it's not always different activities. I have a set framework for how I plan my sessions. And we start with a social question or a question of the day. I'm lucky that I work in a district with a smart board. I'll tell you what, I love that smart board. So what I've been doing now, I'll write a question of the day. The students will come up and they'll kind of all vote. So it might be like, would you rather, we were doing a vocational unit, would you rather work outside or inside? And so then the students come up and they can tally. And that's really, really fun. We've been doing that instead of sitting at a table and asking each other questions because of COVID restrictions, But prior to COVID restrictions, we would sit at a large table and I would ask a question and then the student would answer and ask the person next to them. And I think that we'll get back to that area. I do. So making sure we start with some type of social language question. I usually do some type of adapted book. I do have a TPT store where I put a lot of those books up, and I just try to make sure that they're super age respectful for my students. So they have real life pictures. We had to have one about the aquarium. I love that book. And so it's all about things you might see at the aquarium. So students take turns reading it. We'll do a vocabulary extension activity. And then we do a leisure activity. So that is what we are going to get into now, is what this might look like. The other thing I want to touch on before I get into the activities is video modeling. Video modeling, I'd love to do a podcast episode all about video modeling, and I hope to in 2022. But video modeling is an evidence-based strategy. It's a mode of teaching that uses video recording, that uses a visual model of the targeted skill or behavior. And it can take many forms. You can take a video of the student engaging in that behavior, the targeted behavior. You can do a video of yourself engaging in the targeted behavior. And I've used this with students in not just social skills or leisure skills, but I've used this for students for all different skills. Now, if you're listening to the podcast today, we do also have the podcast on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel at ABA Speech. I do have a lot of these video models located on my YouTube channel. So if I have a video model of the skill we're talking about, I will tell you that because they all are free and they're listed on my YouTube. And what I did for some of these modified leisure skills is I had my own kids. I have 3 kids of my own, and they do help out with all things ABA Speech, from packing and shipping Action Builder and Double Up cards to helping with some video things. So I have videos of them playing different games. And that's been really helpful because the reason I started my YouTube channel is I was working in ABA clinic, actually with the student that was playing Connect 4. And I wanted to think about the easiest way that I could help his one-on-one staff members know how we were playing. And, he worked with a variety of different adults. And so I wanted them all to know. And so I created this YouTube channel and I put on there how to play modified Connect 4. And so that was easy because then I could just share the link with everybody, or I could say, hey, go to my YouTube channel and you can see it. Search Connect 4. I think at the time, I had 2 videos. So it was pretty easy. So video modeling is really, really great. If you're a fan of YouTube, this is what YouTube is. Like if I want to know how to do something in my business or a little graphic trick or something that's tech, I get on YouTube and I watch somebody else do it and then I do it myself. In essence, that is really what video modeling is for our students. Okay, now into some awesome activities that you'll be able to use with your students. The first activity that I want to talk about is modified Scrabble. Modified Scrabble is super fun. You can model this and you can play it in many different ways. I let the students make a word anywhere on the board. So if you're not familiar with Scrabble, each player picks different letter tiles. There are different letters on the tiles, and you have to make the words in certain ways. So what I do is I allow my students to make the word anywhere on the board. It doesn't have to touch other words. That makes it a lot easier. I have another student who really struggled with spelling words on his own. And so what I did for that student is we would have a dry erase board handy and we would write out a word that we composed with his letter tiles. And he would look at that word and he would reference the board and pick his tiles and he would make his word that way. And that was a way to modify it. Scrabble is cool. It's readily available, Amazon, Target, you name it. And a lot of people know how to play it. So when you're away at a holiday at a cousin's house, and your child knows how to play Scrabble because you've worked on it, this is something that you can generalize to different environments. So modified Scrabble, number 1. Number 2, modified Uno. Oh, I adore Uno. What's cool about Uno is that you can play this with younger students and you can play this with older students. This is one that is really great across the lifespan. So what I like to do is I like to take out all of the special cards. So that would mean reverse, skip, draw 2, wild. I take them all out. And then what I do is I put a yellow card face up, a blue card face up, a green card face up, and a red card face up on the table. I have the deck, and then I take a card and I match it to the correct color. The student takes a card and they match it to the correct color. If you're really being strict on COVID precautions, you can have each student have their own deck and they can just take turns from their own deck. I really love playing Uno this way. I have a video model of Scrabble and also of Uno. And I love this so much. I was working in a non-public school for students with very intense behavioral barriers, and we were working on modified Uno. I had a group of boys that I think it was 3 boys and a girl that I was seeing for speech therapy once a week. And they all had one-on-one staff that would come with them. And I was modeling how to play this for the students. And they would play on days they didn't have speech. And what was really cool is this center was moving. They were just growing and bursting at the seams. So they purchased a school and remodeled it. And it's one of my best friends. She owns this really amazing clinic here in the Cleveland, Ohio area. But anyway, what was really cool is they were hanging pictures for this grand kind of open house where we were going to come and see the new place. And there was a picture of students at the center, not my students. I had never worked with any of the students, and they were all playing modified Uno. And I thought, wow, that is so cool that staff saw the way that I was playing it, and they were able to generalize that to other students. It's a really, really nice game. So make sure that you check that one out. What's cool about Uno is that it's definitely readily available. It's very inexpensive. I think it might be $5. And you can play it across the lifespan too. So this is a nice one for siblings as well. I was really struggling with some of my students who were able to match. So I was playing modified Uno with my students. I think I put that video on my YouTube maybe 4 years ago when I started ABA speech, and it was really popular, which was cool. Oh my gosh, people like this. They're playing it with their students, saying, I never thought about that. And I was really struggling with my students who were middle school, high school age, were able to match picture to picture, but other skills were more difficult for them. And I went into action and I created a whole game for students that are in middle school and high school. It's called Double Up, and it is a life skills matching game. And what's so cool about it is that it looks at hygiene words and it looks at leisure words, which are so important with this age group. And so what you can do, it's a 4-person player game, and it has 4 different games included, 144 vocabulary cards. So I use it because speech therapists, I think we're savvy. I use this for all different purposes throughout the day, vocabulary instruction, things like that. But I really created it with my designer in mind to help students have an age-respectful choice for leisure when maybe matching is where their skill set is and will be. And so what you can do is you pick a card and then you match it to your board. The first person that gets all their pictures on the board says double up. And then I usually have the students say each picture that they got. If they pick a picture and it doesn't match their board, I have them either say, who has the book or who has the treadmill? or they just hand it to the other person and the person puts it on their board. So I just played this last week with my middle school students and they really love it. They love it because they can be independent with it. And the other thing that I did with this is that you can actually match associated pictures. So you can have the person playing basketball on your game card, and then you pick up a picture of basketball and you match it to the person playing basketball. So you can match by picture to picture, same exact picture, or you can match picture to associated picture. And I love that because we know as speech therapists, especially working with older students, we want real life pictures so it's age respectful. And we want to be able to differentiate that instruction because that's just the life of a speech therapist, right? Is making sure that every student is getting practice with the skills that they need. So I have video models of Double Up, and that is for sale on my website too. The next game that I want to tell you about is the grocery store game. Oh man, this one is my favorite. And actually, I play with my kids in the car too. So I don't know where I picked up on this game. It was just something I learned in graduate school and just kind of ran with it. And now it's just a tool in my tool bag. The students will fill in the blank for each letter of the alphabet. Now, I don't usually do the entire alphabet. I might do A through H. So on a dry erase board, I will write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay. I might just do part of it. And then what the students do is they each take turns picking a picture that's going to correlate with the alphabet. Let's say that I go first. Now at the top, I also usually write I bought. So if my learners are able to verbalize that or use their device, it says I bought. And then I'll go first to give them a model. I bought apples. Next kid goes, I bought bananas. Next kid goes, I bought carrots. It's funny because I feel like I can tell how the kids eat at home. Like my own kids like to eat donuts and stuff that's not good for you. I was doing it with a new student and for tea, he said truffles. And I was like, oh, hey, this kid likes to go out to eat, right? I thought that was really, really fun. For R, he said red velvet cake. It's fun because it's kind of an insight into what your kids' lives are like, which I really love getting to know the kids. So this grocery store game is really cool. I have a video model for it on my YouTube. I also did create just 2 years ago. It's on the blog and I'll include it in the show notes, but I did create a PowerPoint that has a visual for every single letter of the alphabet. It's completely free. It's just part of a blog post. And some of the students that I was working with were able to come up with words on their own that correlated with the alphabet. And then some students would have a hard time. And so I would have my iPad ready with my PowerPoint that I created. So when my learner needed a visual prompt, I could just show them. And I was trying to think about that because we know we don't want to give a verbal prompt. We want to try to scale back our prompting. So the students are playing independently, always trying to work myself out of a job is what I would say. And so the students are just kind of hanging out together. And so I have that available and I will put that on the show notes. Another website that I really love is called the GameGal. If you haven't seen the GameGal, this is another one that it's called thegamegal.com. And it has great information. I use it because it has a kind of a guessing game where a word will come up and kind of like catchphrase, and I will describe the word and the student will guess it. So I even play this with a lot of students just at the end of a session. So if I have a student that's working even on fluency or, any other type of thing that a school-based therapist might see a student for, I use this for a variety of students. This GameGal word generator also has an area for charades. And I haven't done it in a while, but about 4 years ago, I had a really fun kind of spirited group of kids that I was seeing at the middle school level. And they were all readers. They were able to read. And so charades was fun. They didn't mind getting up, like acting out. Charades is where you kind of see the word, you act it out and your team guesses. And they really, really love that as a group. So thegamegal.com, I will put that in the show notes because that is a super fun one. Okay. The last two that I want to talk about, or three actually, let's talk about three more. Yoga. I love yoga. Yoga is one of my very favorite things to incorporate into speech therapy sessions. And I like to think about yoga because it goes back to that me thinking about my students across the lifespan. I think about, okay, I'm going to see this student out in the community in 5 years. I'm going to see this student in the community in 10 years. How can they access the community? How can something I'm doing in my job help them have a more enriched life? Oh, I just love that. That's why I became a speech therapist, right? So yoga, because there are some yoga studios in my area who do inclusive yoga, which is really cool. Which is really, really cool. But yoga is something you can enjoy at home, right? There's a lot of YouTube channels where they do yoga. I mean, that's how I do yoga. I don't go to a studio. But yoga is really great because it's working on a lot of skills. It's a cooperative activity. It's an amazing leisure skill across the lifespan. It is working on imitation and duration of task, right? Because when you hold that yoga pose, you got to hold it for a little while. So there are, Super Duper has the thing called Yogarilla that is a kind of nice. Sometimes I have just gone on to Google Images and I have made copies of standing poses. And so what I'll do if we're doing it in the classroom, I will on the smartboard put on a meditation music on YouTube, and then I will be the instructor, which is kind of fun because before I started ABA speech, and a long time ago, actually, I always thought at some point in my life, and who knows, right? Life isn't over. I could do it still, that I wanted to be an aerobics instructor because I've been doing group fitness probably since 7th grade. So it's just a part of who I am. So this is my little moment to shine when we do our yoga poses. But what's cool about yoga too is pre-COVID, I had taught my students yoga and we were doing yoga at the end of some of our group sessions. And when COVID hit, I kept up my entire same speech schedule, but I just saw all my students virtually and we would do yoga. But what was so cool is that parents could see us doing yoga and siblings and grandma and grandpa. And it was just nice because in this time of absolute chaos, when the pandemic started, we had this familiar thing that was like our thing. And it was great. It was super fun. So yoga. All right, lifting weights. Oh my gosh, you guys, this was inspired. I did a whole blog post on this, which so you can see me lifting some water bottles. So I saw a picture, I can't even remember. It was like a student in a wheelchair and they were lifting water bottles as a way to work out. And I know at the high school, we have a personal fitness class, which is, weightlifting. And so I'm always trying to think like, what can I do in my speech therapy sessions that's going to help my students as they get older? And so we started doing a whole lifting weights unit. Some of the students would lift water bottles, and that's how we all started. Once again, I was in the front, I was the instructor. And so it was great to work on imitation, cooperative leisure. This is a lifelong leisure skill. I lift weights during the week. It's something that we can all do to stay healthy. And so we would lift with the water bottles. So every student, and we did this during COVID. So, every student had their own water bottles that were in a bag that were labeled. So there's a lot of direction following too. Like, okay, Quinn, go ahead and get your water bottles. Okay, Josie, go ahead and get your water bottles. And just prepping for the event, watching me, we doing it together, cleaning up. And then it was funny because I was in an IEP meeting and I was talking about this leisure skill because, I like this stuff. And so I was elaborating. And the gym teacher, who is amazing, was in this meeting and said, if you want to use weights, like come down and get them. Like the door will be open. You can come and use them. So for some students, it was appropriate for safety and just other reasons to use the water bottles. And for other students, about half the class, they would go down, an assistant would walk with them, they would get their weights and they would come back. And so it was such a fun activity. I just loved that one so much. Okay, the last activity I want to talk about is listening to music. Music is such a big part of life and such a big part of your life. I feel like if we're generalizing, when you're in middle school and high school, I remember all the songs that I won't bore you, but that I listened to in high school. I still have Alexa play some of those songs when I'm cleaning on a Saturday, right? So music is important. And I had this fun spirited group that I worked with about 4 years ago is who I really first did this with, but we just did it last year too. to with the kids I work with now. And we did PowerPoints. I created the PowerPoints about different genres of music. And we would listen to songs from those different genres. Like I had one kid who loved hip hop. I had one kid who just liked popular. I had one girl who loved musicals, so on and so forth. So it was really cool because it was just their personalities really helped drive the instruction for our group. And so we learned about those different genres. We would listen to the songs. We would do a thumbs up, thumbs down, and we would vote if we liked the music. The other thing that I had our tech guys were amazing at the time. And I asked them to add to our classroom iPads. I think we had a couple iPads. They added Spotify and Pandora, which are really amazing free music apps. And so how we would end those sessions is, if we're thinking about that framework where, we had, an adapted book. So for this framework, I was doing a PowerPoint. And then for our extension activity, we were listening to different genres of music. And then the students were voting, thumbs up, thumbs down. And, or if a student had a device, I like that, I don't like that. And then we would end those sessions with a student of the week going on to Spotify or Pandora and in the search bar, picking a song that they wanted to listen to. Now, I had to make sure that the song was appropriate for school, but it was fun because it was a nice way to let that student's personality shine through and to do it in this cooperative activity. So there's so many things that you can do for modified leisure skills. And I would urge you, if you're not working on these things now, and if you think to yourself, man, why am I working on social skills in the way that I'm doing it now? This is a really functional way and a different type of take on social skills. There has been a lot of talk about social skills in the autistic community, about masking, students not being able to be their authentic, true selves, that causing anxiety and depression. And I really take in that information. I have had people on the podcast who have discussed that as well. And I always think to myself, why am I working on these skills? Why am I targeting this with a student? Now, obviously, it's an IEP team decision. Obviously, it's because there's a deficit, there's a need, there's support that we need to offer our students. But this is a really great way where we can think about the student across the lifespan. We can access what they're having difficulty with now. This is going to help them be a part of the community. I mean, hey, if you know how to do yoga and you know how to lift weights, I don't know, let's go to the gym together, right? This is beyond the classroom. We have to think at this age, what we're doing with our students needs to go beyond the classroom. That what you're doing every day as a speech therapist, teacher, whatever your role is, parent, it needs to be important across the lifespan. And these skills will help our students be immersed in the community, will help them find happiness and joy, and will help them become independent communicators. Thanks so much for tuning in, and make sure that you check the show notes. I will put that grocery store visuals PowerPoint there. I also did a talk like this at ASHA, our ASHA conference, which is our speech therapy conference. And I'll tell you what, thank you so much if you commented, sent questions. One person even said, hey, I love your TikTok community. Which, if you know me, that meant something to me because I love that app for some reason. If you want to see me embarrass myself, go over to TikTok. It's ABA Speech. So make sure that you check the show notes. I will have this information, and I will have the various video models listed as well. If you haven't checked out the ABA Speech YouTube, make sure that you give it a look. And in the not so distant future, I am going to be posting more content there as well. Make it a good one. And remember to always keep things fun and functional.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.